Hey everyone, this is Joshua Kirk here with you once again, and now it's time for episode 90 of Album of the Day, in which today I'm going to do my first review of a 2016 album, in which today, and I'm also about to talk about a comeback record, because today's band is a now reunited band from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, an alternative rock band to be exact. It's a trio of musicians who, are known for their distinctive sound of creating essentially rock music through some very unusual acoustic instruments like acoustic guitar, acoustic bass guitar, and a snare and something they call the transophone. Excuse me, as the drum kit. So the band I'm here to talk about is pretty much the now back with a new album alternative rock band, the Violent Femmes. Excuse me, my throat's a little dry, but yeah. But yeah, they recently put out a comeback album, and it's their first in at least 15 years. And it's an independent release on the band's own Added Up Productions label, as well as on an independent label called Play It Again Sam. It's an album that shows them going back to their roots. It was just released, I believe, in March this year. The album's called We Can Do Anything. And I have reviewed this band before. I did a review of their second album, Hollow Ground, which I have a vinyl copy of, released back in 1984. Great album. And of course their self-titled album is, you can't go wrong with that. This band is known for a bunch of different classic songs like Blister in the Sun, Kiss Off, Added Up, Gone Daddy Gone, and Nightmares and American Music. They're known for classics like that. But this is their first album in 16 years, since 2000's Freak Magnet. And this album, I definitely do think shows them, going back to their roots after some of the studio albums before this were a little more poppy and, a little more produced. This one, on the other hand, goes for kind of the raw, intimate energy that made their first couple of albums so great. So, anyway, this is what the CD looks like. Love the artwork on this. The artwork on here was actually designed by Bare Naked Ladies keyboardist Kevin Hearn on here. So he's the one who designed the artwork for this, which, Bare Naked Ladies, another very notable, pop band known for classics like Brian Wilson, The Old Apartment, 1 Week, Pinch Me, etc., etc. Then here's a photo of the band here. The lineup on this album is Gordon Gano, of course, and Brian Ritchie, the two founding members. And the drummer on here is a guy who's also played with Nine Inch Nails and the Dresden Dolls, a guy named Brian Viglione. But he recently left the band, and now their drummer is a guy named John Sparrow, who used to play bass cajon for the band, which of course he does play that on here. And of course, the liner notes are right there. And yeah, that's nothing really too interesting going on here with the packaging, but I do really like the cover art. But I do really like the artwork on it. I think it kind of fits in with kind of the music a little bit. It's very whimsical, and I think it's definitely one word to describe them. But not whimsical in a cheesy way, but you know what I mean. So yeah, that's We Can Do Anything, the CD copy. And my dad is a pretty big Violent Femmes fan too, so basically he pre-ordered it. But of course it was sort of a surprise So like, and eventually one day I came home and, he told me that this was out and I saw it. And, I was pretty excited because, I think this is a great band. So yeah, that's that. So yeah, what I do really like about this album is that it shows them going back to their roots. And the band is doing what works for them, which I think kind of the raw production and the, very charming and just original lyric approach, and as well as just, that voice, as well as that distinctive voice of Gordon Gano, that I think ages really well. He has, they've grown up, but Gordon Gano's voice still sounds as fresh as it did more than 30 years ago on that first album that they put out, which, of course, classic right there. And plus I do like how it really sounds timeless, and I think, I like how the band, you listen to their debut album, it was released in the 80s, but it doesn't sound like anything you'd hear in the 80s. The 80s kind of had a lot of, cheesy pop that, just like some other, music fans, I don't really care about that kind of stuff. But I think it was really refreshing that, back in the 80s, the Violent Femmes put out that album that had a different sound to it, sounded timeless, with some stripped down acoustic instrumentation and like no synthesizers whatsoever or anything like that. And Hallowed Ground was a more cohesive record, but still had kind of those same aesthetics, and the lyrics dealt with more like kind of religious topics too. But the LPs after that I don't really care for, and I'm talking like albums from like The Blind Leading the Naked all the way up to Freak Magnet. Magnet. I mean, they still put out like a few good songs here and there. Of course, who doesn't love the song American Music? And here and there, but they've also put out a lot of duds, like Freak Magnet is probably probably has some of the biggest duds the band has ever put out, in my opinion. But then this album comes along, and then finally we get another really good studio album by the Femmes. During a time when it's pretty much after Hallowed Ground, really the only good thing they really put out was the live album Viva Wisconsin. But yeah, anyway, let's talk about this album now, shall we? So the opening track on this album is called Memory, and right away you definitely do see the band, going back to their roots, and I think it makes sense that after years of, playing these real abstract and absurd and very distinctive songs, they would come out with a song basically, reflecting on, there's always that person in your life where, when you're young, you could, totally remember, something they said or all the books that they read, and then a few years later you kind of realize it's kind of hard to remember, and I think it does kind of reflect on a little bit on like how Gordon Gano and Brian Ritchie first met and pretty much formed the Femmes. They were playing for some sort of school event or something like that. They promised they would play a nice song, but they ended up playing the pretty abstract Gimme the Car, and of course they kind of caused a big riot. They kind of caused a near riot, and of course Gano got suspended from school, and that's kind of how the whole band started. So I think the song kind of has kind of a reflection on that a little bit. And of course it has kind of the raw, intimate sound with, the acoustic bass guitar is definitely pops in the arrangement, and of course the drums have kind of that feel that, it's definitely not a normal drum kit, not just literally, but like figuratively it sounds so different from like just a regular drum kit. and they're like, it's got like this little tick 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 sound to it that no other band really does. So yeah, I like that about this band. And then following that is the song I Could Be Anything, and I would have to say, in my opinion, this is like the Femmes' new like drinking song right here. It's the kind of song that wouldn't feel out of place if you just blasted it at an Irish pub, when Irish pub, it's definitely the kind of song that wouldn't sound out of place if you blasted it in an Irish bar, while everyone was downing glasses of scotch, of stout. This is the kind of thing where they could just sing it loud and just wouldn't feel out of place in that kind of atmosphere. And it does feel that way, but at the same time, has something that normally a lot of drinking songs wouldn't. And it had, and not only does the feel of it, make sense with that kind of atmosphere with its big, almost boozy backup vocals, and its prominent use of accordion and banjo, but also like the lyrics on it are it's like their own spin on like a classic like children's fairy tale, but they kind of, the lyrics are kind of this children's, with the lyrics they kind of created this little children's story, but made it sound absurd and clever enough that grown-ups would enjoy it too. So that's what I think makes it one of the standouts on here. It's absurd, but yet it totally works, and just a very, very fun song, and fun song. And I know this is probably going to be a live favorite for the band because it has pretty much some of the things they're all about in it, like blending unusual instruments together into this one song, and as well as creating some lyrics that on paper sound really cheesy and just flat out terrible, but when you actually use them, they tend to work and tend to make you grin quite a bit. One of my favorite songs on this album would definitely have to be the third song on it, Issues. It's kind of a song that has kind of a lyric approach similar to like some of the stuff off some of their older albums. It talks about the narrator has this person in his life that's just over frustrated with life and just feels really sorry for himself, and that person's just trying to tell him I can't believe that I have to keep hearing about this because it drives me nuts that you always have to act like a jerk around me because life brings it down too much. So yeah, it's definitely a pretty I think the lyrics on it are pretty they make a lot of sense, and so this is definitely one of the best lyrical moments on here. And it's a tune that Gordon Gano co-wrote with Sam Hollander and Kevin Griffin of Better Than Ezra. One of the but like pretty much the big the one really gorgeous song in the album would have to be the song What You Really Mean, which was a song written by Gordon Gano's sister, Cynthia Ganu, and just the lyrics on this one, just really, really good song, and just really beautiful on there. And it has some really nice backing vocals on it from Kevin Hearn of Bare Naked Ladies, who pretty much, this album was recorded during a tour that the band did recently with Bare Naked Ladies, the Last Summer on Earth tour in 2015. So we have Kevin Hearn blending some accordion, guitar, keyboards, and backing vocals to the album, and I would have to say the harmonies that he provides to the song, just absolutely just beautiful. Full on here. And there's definitely some more absurdity to the album on songs like the track "Foothills," which talks about you always got that little secret in life, and just and you may know and you may notice sometimes you tend to be a little bit of a jerk a little bit, so it's like once again there's definitely a lot of humor to be found on the album, and Foothills is definitely one example of that. Then there's the really driving track, both literally and figuratively, called "Traveling Solves Everything," which talks about how if you got a problem, well then, maybe traveling to try to clear your mind will, help with your problems. And it's also got this really driving feel to it with this real low saxophone on it that sounds like a car motor or something like that. As well as, this banjo that's got this very rhythmic feel to it on it. As well as just, these, as well as the backing vocals that, as well as these real, shouted backing vocals of, drive, drive, drive! It's just a fun song. It definitely gives me an excuse to just yell out in the car, when those shouted vocals come in. And then there's the song "Big Car," which originally was originally an old song that Gordon Gato did perform at a couple of Femmes shows in the past, and at some solo shows that he did too. But of course, this is one. Now you can pretty much see why this song was one that they initially didn't want to do in the studio or something like that. And they give it a real shocking ending, in terms of the lyrics for the for a nice upbeat song on here. So it's the lyrics on it are surprisingly dark. So the last few lyrics on it sound to me like maybe some of the lyrics from "Give Me the Car," but then it ends with "Your body will not be found," which gives it that kind of mysterious, almost murderous kind of mood there, which is pretty intense, for a song that sounds all kind of nice and happy. Then there's the song "Untrue Love," which has this kind of sunny beach folk feel to it, with lyrics that are definitely have its similarities with stuff from their older albums, but yet it's still a good song. And then the closing track on here, "I'm Not Done," is a song that's reminiscent of the sort of the fast country tinged material of Johnny Cash. So this is a song pretty much reminiscent of that in terms of the fast tempo going on, and Gordon Gano's kind of voice that sounds like they're playing maybe in some sort of bar. It has that kind of echo to it that reminds me a lot of maybe Elvis or Johnny Cash a little bit. So it doesn't sound like the rest of what's on the album, but I do like that about it. And also, I pretty much didn't really mention. There's a wide variety of different instruments on the album. The band definitely has the ability to blend in unusual instruments to their sound, not just in terms of the acoustic bass guitar and the whole giddy up, but also some of the instrumental duties provided by some of the members of a group of backing musicians that they call the Horns of Dilemma, which, of course, I just mentioned John Sparrow, and the producer of this album is a guy named Jeff Hamilton. He's played with the band for quite a decade now. He plays stuff like guitar, mandolin, ukulele, and he does provide vocals to it as well. Which you can tell they're having fun in the studio. You can tell they sound real happy to be back in the studio again, and you can pretty much see that working with Jeff Hamilton. They feel more comfortable. I can tell working with some producer that communicates with them well as helps them make their album and flesh out creative ideas, as opposed to some albums before where they worked with big producers that kind of, I'm sure that there were a few times with some of their past 6 albums where they were like, I don't really like this take. But the producer was like, no, that sounds great, let's put it on the album. But on here, it's like, they listen to the playback and they're like, yeah, that's the Femmes right there. We all agree that this should be on the album. And then, of course, we have distinctive addition of some saxophones on here, provided by Blaze Garza, who actually has been a member of the Horns of Dilemma since he was 14 years old. That's quite young to be a full-time musician right there. And then, of course, Kevin Hearn of Bare Naked Ladies, already mentioned. He does play a little bit on this album as well as design the really cool artwork. So, yeah. And some guy named Paul Sabar that I don't really know about plays like an electric 12-string on a song or two on here. I'm really digging this new album. If you're a huge Violent Femmes fan, I can't see how you could be disappointed by the album. It's just very, very likable, very charming and raw, and, there's nothing, and, it's just, just a great album, and hopefully I can be able to see these guys live sometime, though, because I heard they're really good live, and Viva Wisconsin is a fantastic live record. Highly recommend that. And of course, you can tell they're kind of a well-oiled band on tour when you listen to this album, too. So yeah, highly recommend you check out this album. I give this probably an 8 or a 9 out of 10. One of those two. But anyway, that's my review of We Can Do Anything, the new album by the Violent Femmes. See you for episode 91.